Were you practicing? In the past. This Shabbat you studied, this weekend. Perfect. Oh, now. Be careful, please, near the phone here. Is it working?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay. Boker Tov. So please take out a piece of paper. Once again, I'm going to give you an additional quiz. Question number 1. I'll put them on the board, I guess, so that people at home can see as well. Okay, everybody has their tea. Meantime, I'll read for you if you can't see. Numbers 1, 2, and 3. Question number 1. What is forbidden or untithed produce called? Number 2. When is the new wheat permitted? Number 3. How many years after planting a tree can you eat the fruit, and how? Number 4. You know the answers to these questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Write them down. Write them down, and then hand it in. I'm gonna get 10 questions, hopefully. B'ezrat Hashem. Any benefit, yes. Boker Tov, watch out for the camera because it's a little bit over there and there's a cord here. So you're welcome to come and sit here if you like. Just whatever's good for you. Okay? Little quiz, take a piece of paper in the middle here and please write down your answers. Question number 5 is which years of the Shemitah cycle must we separate A, Ruma, B, Maaser Rishon, C, Maaser Sheni, D, Maaser Ani. Good morning. Hi Ezra, how are you?
Do you know the next one we'll be learning after Perek
Perek Shishi. Okay. That counts as, I guess, 4 questions in one. So 6 would be number 9, really. Oh, goodness. Okay, I'll read them out one more time. If you, I'll get out of the way so you can see the questions. For those of you at home as well, hopefully you'll be able to see this. I will read them off from the top. Number 1, if anybody wants to listen, and you can't read my writing, I apologize. No. Question number 1. What is forbidden or untithed produce called? Number 2, when is the new wheat permitted? Number 3, which forbidden mixture becomes prohibited from any benefit? Number 5, which years of the Shemitah cycle must we separate? A, Teruma, B, Maaser Rishon, C, Maaser Sheni, and D, Maaser Ani? And number 6, when must Challah be separated? Okay, so I think that's only 9 questions. I'll add one more just so we have time. Because this is 5, 6, 7, 8 questions. We'll leave it at 8. Let's see how you do with 8. That should be it. Brief review of what we did last week. The laws of making produce kosher.
Done, Rabbi.
Excuse me?
Done. I'm done.
You finished?
Yeah.
Pass it up, please.
I don't know.
Need some work. Need some work. You got a few right. You got a few right. If you need to ask Ravid, you can ask. It is small writing, I apologize.
What does it mean, untithed?
Untithed, there's certain tithes or gifts that you have to take off of the produce to make it kosher. And until you take off those gifts, until you give them, the produce has a name. It's like treif for forbidden meat. What's the term used for forbidden produce? Is my question. Okay.
I do not know number 4.
Let's see what you got. Excuse me. Kind of cold last night. Well done. Well done. Excellent. Not 100%, but almost there. There's a few details I'd like to fine tune with you in just a moment, but very good. Very good.
Except for number 4.
Mm.
I got nothing.
Okay. Okay. Good to your notes, yeah. See if you wrote anything down. But okay, we'll give it another minute or two. Just write your answers. You don't have to copy over all the whole questions, just the answers. Watch out for the, there's a cord here. We'll take it up in just a second if you want. We'll take it up. If you don't know, so yeah. Okay, that's. Oh, those who came in late, please write down on your papers the 12 months, the Hebrew months, please. The other guys did that first. Yeah, you need to. You weren't here last week mostly, so how would you know, right? So can't expect you to know if you weren't here. But so let's discuss it. Okay, Ravid, what do you say? Number 1, do you remember the name of forbidden produce?
What is produce?
It's vegetables and fruit and grain, things that are grown in the ground. It's produce.
Because I wrote down strifer.
That's right. That's usually used for meat, for animal products.
No problem.
There's another word for forbidden produce that has not been tithed. Chaim, want to tell us?
Tevel.
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 Exactly.
Of course.
Tevel. The Hebrew word, that's actually tevel. Where is the new wheat permitted? These are verses in the Torah where it says that there's a special offering to be brought on the 16th of Nisan.
Yes.
It's the day after the first day of Pesach. And nowadays we don't have the temple, but we wait for that date until the new wheat is permitted. Very good. Number 3, how many years after planting a tree can you eat the fruit? And how? So the answer is
3.
but what's with the how? This is, so the first 3 years are absolutely forbidden, right? You're not allowed to, and Chaim added in that the 3rd year really only ends at Tu B'Shvat, good point, which is coming up. In the 4th year, you're allowed to eat the produce only after you redeem the holiness with a coin. You have to transfer the holiness onto a coin in the 4th year, then you can eat the produce. And then the 5th year, you can have the fruit. From the 5th year and on, you've got to do all the rest. You still have to separate tithes. But regarding the laws of how many years, it's the 3rd year, the 3 years, nothing. 4th year, you redeem it. It's called the holy 4th year produce. And afterwards, then you have regular produce, which is still tevel. It's still tevel until you take off the other tithes, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But the answer to number 3 was, what's the first 3 years called? It's called orla. Orla. Orla is the same word as used for foreskin. It means something forbidden. It has to be separated off from yourself. And the 4th year is called the rivai, like the word arba, rivai. So orla and rivai are these mitzvot. Number 4, which forbidden mixture becomes prohibited from any benefit? So we know that you're not allowed to have mixtures in your clothing, but you can sell it. You're not allowed to have forbidden husbandry, mixing different types of animals, but you're allowed to have benefit from it. You're not even allowed to plant together 2 species that are different, but you're still allowed to have benefit from it. You're allowed to sell it to a non-Jew, even though it's forbidden. The only one type of forbidden mixture which is so bad that has to be burned, you can have not benefit from it, is forbidden mixture in a vineyard. Kil'ei hakerem. The forbidden mixtures in a vineyard are the most severe type of forbidden mixtures. We covered that last week.
Would you mind reading it again?
Sure. Kil'ayim. And since we have, it's called smichut, so we say kil'ei hakerem. Kerem is a vineyard. Kil'ei hakerem. Which years of the Shemitah cycle must we separate teruma? Who remembers what we learned last week about the 7-year cycle? Chaim nailed it. Very good on this one. What do you say? Remember? What do you remember, Ravi? Nothing yet. We have
Nothing yet.
So we said that it's a 7-year cycle, right? So the 7th year, none of these apply. The 7th year Shemitah, all the fruit and vegetables are hefker, ownerless, so there's no owner to take off any tithes. But the years 1 through 6, we have Teruma and Maaser Rishon. The first 2 are all 6 years out of the 7-year cycle. Okay? So answer here is 1 through 6. 1 through 6. Maaser Sheni is on years 1, 2, and then 4 and 5. And Maaser Ani fills in the blanks here in the end of the first group and the end of the second group. In year 3 and year 6. Okay, so Maaser Ani is in year 3 and 6. Maaser Sheni is in year 1, 2, 4, and 5. And finally, when must challah be separated? Good. There's a minimum measurement. I think we spoke about it, 1.5 kilos being the bottom line, under which you do not have to separate any challah. Most cakes and cookies, you don't use a whole 1.5 kilos of flour. Or baking bread, usually you bake bread with wine, 2 cups, I think a kilo of flour is about 4 or 5 cups. So it's only when you make a large amount, and when you have 1.5 kilos, you should separate challah without a bracha. And we said over 2.2 kilo, some opinions even 2.5 kilo, only then do you separate challah, take off the little bit of the dough, and again, when after you make the dough, not after it's already been baked. Ideally, it should be done right away when you make the dough. Then, if it's with 2.2 kilos of flour, you can make a bracha. Make a bracha before separating the challah, and then you burn it or you wrap it up and throw it away. Okay? So it's good to review. Unfortunately, I didn't give you a book, so I can't have you review those laws inside. But it's good we're doing the review here. Okay? Can I erase this now?
Yes.
Everybody? Benjamin?
Yes.
Can I erase it? Are you still...
I know only two.
You don't want me to? So what? Okay. Okay, how far?
Tevel.
Tevel is number 1, yes.
Yeah, and let's see.
Well, the next question was...
Three.
right, when does the new wheat... What's that called, the new wheat? You know the word for new? I think the camera moved off of me. It doesn't look to be pointing towards here. You need just to tilt it towards me, I think. Yeah, that's right. That's all. A little more of a tilt, probably. Chadash is new. The new wheat. It's just called new. Chadash. And I think just leave the stender, but it doesn't need to be supported really. It should be fine. Okay, thank you. And then we said Chadash, and then we said Orla, first 3 years, forbidden fruits. Revai, the fruits of the 4th year must be redeemed. And then we have the cycle of, that depends on the Shemitah years. Right? This was all 3 and 4 years from when the sapling is planted in the earth. But then we have a cycle of a 7-year cycle for the entire Jewish people together, regardless of when you planted. Anytime you plant, anytime you have vegetables, primarily it's vegetables during those 7-year cycle, you have to take off the, in year 1 through 6, the Truma, year 1 through 6, the Maaser Rishon. Where does the Truma go to? No, Truma's Kohen. Maaser Rishon is to the Levi. Maaser Sheni, you take it yourself, eat it in Jerusalem. Maaser Ani is given to the poor person, Ani means poor, and Challah is separated off in the... When you make dough, and there's a certain amount of minimum measurement of how much flour used for you to be obligated to separate off the challah. Okay? Well done. Well done. Let's proceed. We're gonna, as we started talking at the end of the week about the laws of kosher meat. Sorry?
Hebrew ones?
The Hebrew ones. Yeah, did you get them? You know them?
Yeah.
Well done.
I did not remember.
You switch these. Good. Just you skip them. Yeah, Nissan and ER and Sivan. Well done, good. We moved on to talk about the kashrut of animals. First thing we talked about was it cause pain to animals. We talked about the morality of eating animals at all and how that fits into the perhaps the grand vision that one day we won't be eating animals, but for now it seems like there are mitzvot for eating animals, so at least we must do it in the proper way. And now we're going to start talking about the mitzvot involved with kosher animals, and how to which ones are kosher and how to make them kosher. First thing to discuss is which animals are kosher. So we have different categories of animals in the Torah. We have something called a chaya, and we have something called a behema. Within behema, we have, so a chaya are wild animals which are not domesticated. Behema means domesticated. Domesticated animals. Chaya are wild animals which roam free. Behema and chaya, two types of animals. And then within the behema, we have two categories. We have something called bakar. In the Torah, it's called bakar. It's just, and we have something called tzon when you read the Torah. So these bakar primarily are heavier animals, and tzon are the lighter animals. In other contexts, we call them behema gasa and behema daka, a heavier animal and a lighter animal. In just a moment, we'll talk about what they are, and then these are the different types of animals we have in the Torah. Then, of course, we have fish, and we have kosher fish, and then we have birds, right? Birds are called off, and fish is dag. How do you spell dag in Hebrew? Dal Gimel. Dal Gimel. Very simple. Dal Gimel. And the Dalet, which letter of the alphabet is it?
Dalet.
Dalet is 4, and Gimel is 3. So there's a phrase that goes like this. Ha'ochel dag, someone who eats fish, beyom dag, on the day, what day is called dag?
7th day.
7th day, on Shabbat. Zoche, you merit to be saved from dag. Dag can also be an acronym for Din Gehinom, the punishment of hell. Gehinom is hell. So Din Gehinom is an acronym for it. So it's a little ditty. Ochel dag, b'yom dag, nitzal midag. If you eat fish on the 7th day, you're free from being punished in hell. And they all three use just 2 letters. Dag, dag, dag. Dag means fish. It happens to be the gematria of 7, so it could be used for Shabbat. It's called the day of Shabbat, day of Dag, and Dag can be Din Gehinom. It's an old little haiku. Off birds are called ofot, and we're going to talk about the kashrut of all kinds. Off, yeah, off.
It's chicken.
Ofot. Right. So in the Torah, they use both words, right? They both words. There's different types of off. You're right. That in the modern Hebrew, off is primarily chicken, but it's used as the category in general.
Okay.
Tzipor is bird. You're right. Tzipor is bird as well. And the Torah uses both, almost interchangeably.
It's eine Waffe.
Fe, sofit. Fe, sofit, the final fe. That's right. Off. Ofot is the way we do the plural. Ofot. In any case, so there are kosher chayot and not kosher chayot. There are kosher behemoth and not kosher behemoth. There are kosher dag, fish, and not kosher fish. And there are kosher birds and not kosher birds. So the easiest, well, what should we start from? Should we start from the top or start from the bottom?
Personally, I think the easiest is fish.
Fish, yes. Okay, so the easiest is fish. We know that there's two conditions to have a kosher fish, but really it comes down to one. And that's, of course, who can tell me? Scales and fins, right? Scales are these little things on your body, that, little flaps, sort of skin, a special type of little panels on your skin. Fins is what the fish have underneath their bodies that maneuver, they help you steer. So the sages made a statement which has been true until today, somehow amazing, scientifically, fact, that any fish that has fins also has scales. So really, all you really need to look for is scales. If you want to know if a fish is kosher, you look for the scales. If it has the scales, you can assume that it has the fins too. So if you go to a foreign country and you want to get some kosher fish, you have to go to the fish stand and look for the scales. It can be tricky sometimes because they get scales a little bit later in life, or sometimes the scales are so small you can't see them, but essentially this is the one simple rule. Okay? Birds?
Rabbi, I want to ask about fish.
Yes.
In my country, there's one type of fish. It comes with scale. When you fish out from the water, the scale drop off.
Yeah.
So it's
Still kosher. Yeah, if it has scales, the way it's born, when it's natural in its natural habitat, doesn't matter if it falls off later. It's still kosher. Yeah. What fish is that? Can't remember the name. Okay. Okay, birds. Birds. It's very interesting. The Torah gives us two lists. Here, there's a list in the Torah of the permitted list in the Torah. I think there's 11 or something like that. I can't remember exactly how many there are, but there's a list of which are the kosher of the permitted animals. Of them, the only two which are really common nowadays is the deer and
giraffe.
the giraffe is not so common, but it could be that that's one of them, right? There's a list. Pretty much the deer is the only one that's common. But anyone that's in the list, if we can identify that this is one of the lists, like the giraffe, according to many interpretations, is one of those lists. Some say the buffalo is one of this list of permitted. And what's different here is by birds, there's a list in the Torah of the forbidden. So, according to this, our sages interpret and tell us that it must be that the Torah is going to take the easiest way. In other words, most of the wild animals are prohibited, and so it gives you the short list of the ones that are permitted. Regarding the birds, most of them should be allowed, And that's why it takes the shorter route and gives you the list of the forbidden birds. But the bottom line is that for all these animals, in addition to having the list, there's also simanim. Simanim are signs. Sometimes we call them kosher signs. Just like we had the signs over here, there's kosher signs of here too. There's two primary kosher signs. One is an animal that chews its cud, and the second one is split hooves. Now, split hooves, a hoof it's sort of like a very thick fingernail, but it's not on their fingers, it's on the bottom of the animal's feet. And in many animals, this foot, this bottom covering of the foot is split into two. And that's condition number one, sign number one of a kosher animal. Deer, for example, have split hooves. And sign number two is chews its cud. And animals that chews its cud, most animals have 4 stomachs. They have 4 stages, 4 parts of their digestive system. And a characteristic of herbivores, animals which are designed not to be predators to eat other animals, but to eat only from the grass and the vegetation. The vegetation has a lot of fiber. It's very hard to digest. And so many times the animal will chews it in its jaws, swallows it. It gets a little bit processed with chemicals, and sometimes it turns into pellets. And then those pellets get regurgitated back up into the animal's mouth, and the animal chews it again. That's cud. That's it chews its cud. What gets it swallowed and starts to digest gets spit back up into its mouth, and it chews it more until finally it's ready to go back down and get processed by the rest of the digestive system. So these are the 2 signs. However, as I said, the common animals, we don't use as much the signs, but we use the ones which are listed as permitted in the Torah, of which the ones which are common really are only deer, but also deer venison is kind of rare. Primarily what we have is bakar and son. Bakar and son, what's special about the behemah, what makes these different, these domesticated animals, is that, as you see on the page, which I'm going to hand out to you now. Pass these around, please. There's plenty to go around. It's cute, and I get pictures too. This is the pictures of the animals from which the Torah says you bring korbanot. There's only 5 types of animals from which we bring offerings to the temple. One is called bakar, 2 are called son, and then there's 2 types of birds from which you bring korbanot. So that's a sum total of 5 types of animals from which we bring offerings in the temple. Of course, they're kosher for eating as well, as the Torah at length, at one point, describes that we're allowed to eat these animals even if we don't bring them to the Beit HaMikdash. When you live far away from Jerusalem and you only bring the sacrifices in Jerusalem, the Torah said, if you slaughter them properly, then you can eat these animals at home. What are the animals? So let's take a look. So the first, where it says number 1, that's where it says bakar. So here we have now many Hebrew words for saying basically cows. There's male cows and female cows. Par and para, also shore. So sometimes we say cow or bull or ox. We're talking about the masculine, the male, and the female is para. And the young calf is the young of the species called a cow. There's many types of cows. There are many types of bulls, but they're all kosher. They're all considered to be, as I said, these are the heavier animals. And the tzon are the lighter animals. And basically there's two types. There's sheep and goats. But in Hebrew, of course, we have words for the male sheep and the female sheep. As you can see on the right-hand side, please note that the masculine is called ayil. Ayil. There's a dot under the yud. Ayil. Don't confuse that with the deer, which is called ayal. It's a very popular name in modern Israeli society. People call their children, like tzvi, we said, is a type of deer mentioned by the Torah, so is ayal. It's a form of a deer.
I have a friend called Ayal.
You have a friend ayal. Don't call him ayil with an E, ayil, because then you're calling him a sheep. He would rather be a much a more wild and stronger animal called an ayal. Very confusing at first. But here you have the ayil is the masculine sheep. The feminine, you've heard of the feminine sheep. It's the name of one of our mothers, Rachel. Rachel is, you can see it here on your chart, the female sheep is called a Rachel.
She probably got made fun of and gone.
She probably did, yeah. Her father was Lavan. I guess he was really into the flocks, into farming.
He was white, Lavan. And his daughter Rachel was like a sheep.
Rachel is a white sheep, maybe. Yes.
Would she have been spotted though? She
That's it. How could she go to be Yaakov's wife if she wasn't spotted? It's a good point.
She couldn't have been too spotted though. She was the pretty one.
You don't like freckles? Okay.
No,
think of that. There are spotted humans. Don't think it's not only sheep. Now, a little sheep, as you can see on your chart, a little sheep is called a taleh, or in feminine, there's talia. Talia. You've heard the name Talia? Many women are called Talia.
Yes.
Talia. Nobody calls their boys Taleh. Taleh is lamb, right? Young sheep are lamb in English. And as you can see, in the Torah, sometimes the Torah changes up the letters. Instead of keves, we say kesev. And keves and kivsa, and kesev and kisba. But they're the young of the sheep. Underneath a year, less than a year, they have the name keves or kivsa. Over a year, they already get the adult, full-grown sheep is called an ayil, and the female is a rachel. If you look over to the goats, we have other names. Of course, goats in general are called izim, and the young are called the gdi izim, or se'izim, and gdiya sometimes is the feminine, which is used. But we have special names for the adults. The adult he-goat is called an atud, atudim. That's what's used by Yaakov the term used when he says he wants this kind of goat and that kind of goat, the speckled and the banded. They called atudim. Atud, also it's called the taish in modern Hebrew. the adult goat with the little
Oh, the beard.
goatee goat
Ah.
goatee is called a taish. Taish. And sometimes in the Torah it says it's called a sa'ir. Sa'ir because it's got hair. It's got lots of hair. Sa'ir, and the female is the se'ira, or iza in modern Hebrew. We have ez and iza, but is in general is the goat family. There's different types of goats, but they're all called goats. Okay, so and it's a little confusing because the Torah calls the young of both the sheep and the goats se. So that's why the Torah will sometimes say se kvasim, the young of the sheep, or se izim, the young of the goats. Finally, the last regarding the birds, the only two birds from which we bring korbanot is the tor and the bnei yonah. They're both pigeons. It's the types of pigeons. Sometimes they call the yonah turtle dove. It's a type of a dove. Dove is very similar to a pigeon. Tor, or maybe a tor is a pigeon and a yonah is a dove. And smaller ones, bnei yonah, the Torah says you bring the sacrifices from the young doves, whereas pigeon, I think they're not called young ever. So.
But a pigeon is a dove, right?
It's the same thing, yeah. But I think maybe we call pigeons older ones. And I don't know. I don't know what we call a pigeon, what we call a dove. But in the Torah, there's Tor or Bnei Yonah. So it's the older ones or the younger ones. Anyways, this is sometimes useful to have pictures.
Where we find the Tanagol?
So there's no korbanot from Tarnagol. So that's why it's not mentioned in the Torah.
Okay.
What's a tanagol?
It's a chicken.
Or chicken?
Chicken. But it is. No, let's go back and talk about these. Said there's a list in the Torah of the forbidden birds. So anything which is not in that list should be kosher. So of course, chicken is not in that list. And there are some signs which our sages declared for how to know what's a permitted bird versus this list of forbidden birds. We look at it and we can analyze it. We see most of them, if not all of them, are predator birds, which like eagles and like vultures and birds which kill others. And they don't just eat vegetation, and so that's predators are forbidden. So the sages gave a few other signs, but essentially all birds should be permitted if they they don't look like predators. The predators have, I think, claws. Good morning. Look at the Menachem.
Menachem, can I ask a funny question?
Funny? Sure. We like jokes.
Can we ask you to finish here a little early and come in at 11:45 to our class? We have a bunch of questions we have to ask that are like serious questions.
You're gonna put me on the spot in front of everybody?
Well, I would put you on the spot. You're better. You know more than I do. Is that all right?
I'll try. I could come in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody, to lose 5 minutes, but there's some questions that came up that had people quite nervous. So
nervous? Oh boy. Okay.
Is that it?
I'll try. Oh, yeah, sure. No problem. Okay. I have a rule. Just start and say it's forbidden, even before hearing the question. So, make things simple. Guilty until proven innocent. Okay, anyways, so here, by the birds, it should be the opposite. It's pretty much innocent until proven guilty. If it's not one of the list of forbidden birds, it's allowed. But since we're not so sure of the signs and how to distinguish between the different types of birds, the custom is that we only eat birds that we have a tradition that Jewish communities have eaten them. And that limits us very much to, basically chickens and geese and ducks. And turkey's an interesting one.
Yes, interesting.
Turkey's an interesting one because we don't really have a tradition. And yet, because they were discovered, I think, in South America. and it's just only about 150 years ago, maybe even less. So how could we have a tradition about them if nobody's seen them before? So they sort of got in through the back door. Now they should be allowed because they have the signs. I'll tell you what the signs are. I have it here. We don't really use them so much. That's why I'm not teaching you them. But the signs are. It has an extra sort of toe. It has a toe. When it stands on a wire, it doesn't split its legs, its toes, to be some on this side and some on the other side. Right, the ones that are predators, they have toes which like are claws, and they go on either side of if they're standing on a wire. And also there's the what's that called? This part of the body, the gizzard. The gizzard of the kosher animals can be peeled. I don't know much about gizzards, but the gizzard can be peeled if it's a kosher animal. So anyways, the turkey came along, and it has all the kosher signs. It's definitely not a predator. We know that they're domesticated birds. But we don't necessarily we didn't have any tradition about it. But it became very quickly, Jews everywhere were eating them. And it turns out, part of it is that the rabbis who allowed it, I mean, these are Jewish communities that had rabbis, they considered it to be a form of a chicken. It's very similar to a chicken. Turkey looks like a chicken, sort of like a big chicken, okay? Even though now we know that it's not really true scientifically in terms of the species. But it became permitted, and as I said, really all birds are permitted unless they're proven innocent until proven guilty. So turkeys, because it became established that Jewish communities eat them, that custom spread, and turkeys are allowed. Most rabbis. There's some rabbis that are still sticklers, and they say, sorry, 200 years ago no Jews ate turkeys, so we can't eat turkeys today either. But most rabbis say that turkey is permitted, like most birds are permitted. It's not a predator. It has the signs, and once communities start to eat them, that's considered a tradition already, and. So turkey sort of snuck in through the back door, but pretty much it's only chicken and duck and geese and those we Jews have been eating them for centuries and
Peacock.
Peacock, I don't know of any tradition to eat peacock. I've never heard of anybody eating a peacock. What a shame though, those colors.
Only males eat them.
Only males have the beautiful.
Males? I thought the males. Like lions, huh?
You know what is foie gras?
Yeah. How is it made?
Sorry?
How is it made? What does it come from?
It's like the one that you give.
Stuffing, right. So I think they stuff geese to make foie gras, right?
Yeah, you take a funnel, you put it down your throat, you overfeed them in it.
Overfeed
the
them,
liver.
right? Fat in the liver of the foie gras, right?
It's
So
a whole issue.
it's an ethical issue because it's the assumption is the animals suffer, and so some rabbis want to forbid it because of the suffering to the animals. But as far as everything we've been saying on the board, it's a kosher type of animal. It's allowed to eat it, and as long as we'll see how we make them kosher beyond that. But it's a problem to stuff them. Yeah.
They put also alcohol.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Brandy, I think.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know. They're French, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not French.
They're the same people that looked at snails and went, that looks tasty. So.
Right. Now there is another type of kosher species that can be eaten. And this is a little surprising, and that is, it's called in the Torah. It's called chagav. Chagav are little flying creatures, or
Grasshoppers.
locusts, grasshoppers. There's different types of grasshoppers, which the Torah says there's two types. There's some, and there's actually a list of 4 kosher types. Again, we have a list of the permitted. That means, just like we said, there's a list of the permitted chayot. That means all the rest are prohibited. So most of the chagavim, most of these locusts, are forbidden. There's 4 types which the Torah lists them, and the psukim in the Torah that has names. You don't have to know all the names. One of the names is the most popular. It's called, we had it in last week's parsha, arbeh. The arbeh. This is a type of locust which the Torah says is kosher to eat. And it even gives you signs as well. The signs are that it has raised hind legs, raised bent legs, in addition to his other legs. And then it has also, I think, 2 sets of wings. Let me double check this. The signs of a kosher locust, chagavim. The signs are, sorry. Look up there. A second, I have it here. Yeah. Right in the Torah, there's Salam and Chargol and Chagav and Arbeh, of course. Arbeh is the only one which we allow today. And the sign is yeah, it has to have 2 sets of legs, and it's got this bent, a third set, right? The raised bent legs is the third set, and the wings which cover its body. Wings that cover its body. The rabbis added another 2 signs, which are they have to have 4 wings, and I'm sorry, I'm confusing. The first 2 from the Torah are 2 sets of regular legs and an extra set which has the bent legs. Okay, I put 1 and 2 together. These are the signs from the Torah. Raised bent legs plus 2 sets of legs. And regarding the wings, these are the 3 and 4 of the rabbinic, and then it has wings that cover its body, and it has to have 4 wings that cover its body. 4 wings that cover its body. These are the rabbinic signs of a kosher locust. Has anybody here eaten a locust?
I ate one time.
You did? Wow, yeah.
Was
Was it yummy? So we don't know if it's kosher because most Jews don't live in Egypt and Yemen. The Yemenite Jews and the Egyptian Jews, they until today have a tradition about which species are kosher locusts, and they eat them. They eat them till today. You could go and ask a Yemenite, grab a locust and say, "Is this a kosher one or not?" So if they learn it, they'll know. And they have a tradition. But most Jews around the world have lost the tradition, so we don't eat the locusts at all. Locusts don't require any, it's very interesting, they don't require any shechita, their blood is kosher, you even don't, you just...
Because they only eat leaves and vitamins and things.
Right, they say they're very nutritious, you can roast them up. Yeah. So there are kosher locusts, but anyways, this is a specialty item. Okay. These are the species of kosher animals and birds. Okay? Questions? Comments? Yes.
No question on the but
Mm.
what is how about the eggs? The eggs of the non-kosher.
Also, from kosher, they have to be from kosher birds, not from non-kosher birds. So, vulture eggs are not kosher.
Ostrich.
Chicken eggs are.
Ostrich.
Ostrich is one of the I can't remember if ostrich is one of the forbidden ones. I think it's one of the forbidden. Forbidden. It's a list in the Torah. Yain is I can't. I think it's forbidden. It's a forbidden bird, so the eggs are forbidden as well. You can't have ostrich eggs. I have to double check that though. I'm not sure. Pretty sure. Not sure. Other questions so far? Okay, this is where to start. You have to do a little zoology. Today we covered some zoology. This is nice because you see the pictures, and these are the ones that are mentioned in the Torah, from which we bring sacrifices. So they, of course, they're considered kosher animals. Pretty much, mostly what we eat today is, cows and sheep and goats. It's a little more rare. The meat is not as tasty, but it can. Of course, it's kosher, and but we do eat lamb, of course, and shawarma is shawarma. The shawarma can be made from lamb.
Yes.
Yes, and sometimes it's made from what else is it made? Yeah, it can be.
Cheap version.
The cheap version is turkey, but the expensive one is lamb. Yeah.
And I don't think so in these shops.
The other day I was in the supermarket, a special super kosher supermarket, and I hadn't seen it in years. But I saw here in Israel they were selling kosher duck.
I see before in.
Yes,
Kosher.
yeah, they sell it. It's a kosher
But
bird.
It's not expensive. It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Not so cheap, but for a special thing I haven't had in years. But I remember back in Canada, I guess they did more shchita. What do we do with the animals? Once you have you have a kosher animal in front of you, so all the birds included require shechita. So we're going to just a few words about shechita and some other mitzvot which have to do with the animals. Okay, so the assumption is it's a debate, of course, but the assumption is, and it can be proven scientifically. There's articles written by academics how scientifically it works, that the shechita is the least painful way to kill an animal. When you cut the what's the vein with the blood?
The
called-
arteries.
Yeah, the artery. That's the primary artery which brings the blood to the brain, where the sensors are for pain. So right away, if it doesn't get any more, at the moment that it's being killed, no more blood will go into the pain receptors in the brain. Whatever, of course, different animals have different levels of pain receptors, but that's the quickest way. And so pain is only received in the brain. So if the brain doesn't get any blood right away, so then the assumption is that there's not much pain, if at all, when you do shechita. And the animals, they don't. Most animals don't know that they're being slaughtered. They're not aware that if they see an animal next to it being slaughtered, they won't get scared. It's only if the animal gets pulled and pushed. And sometimes they do that. We put the animals down on the ground, or so that they don't move. When we do the shechita, we'll talk about the rules of shechita. It has to be very clean cut, very one cut, very quickly done. And so there's a story about Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, where there was a sheep who was running away from the shochet because I guess his hair was being pulled out, or it was in pain, and it brushed up against Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the greatest We mentioned him before, the great revolutionary of the Tanaim, right? The author of the Mishnah. And he said to this lamb, "What are you running away from the shechita? Go to the shochet, because that's what you were created for." He said the other day that assumption is that the man is the crown of creation, the greatest, the highest level of the food chain, and the lamb is designed to be eaten by man. So he said to this little sheep that brushed against him, "Go ahead." And the Talmud says that from that day on, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had a lot of medical difficulties. He had digestive problems. I don't know, maybe he got Crohn's disease, I don't know, whatever it is. But he suffered a lot in his digestive system, and it's described in the Talmud as a punishment from heaven for his not being sensitive enough to the cruelty to this poor sheep. And only years later, when one of his servants was cleaning the house and found two little baby rats, essentially, a type of a rodent, and they were cute little babies, and this maid servant was going to kill them. And here Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had already learned his lesson, and he said to her, "No, don't kill them. We have to have mercy on all of God's creatures, all of God's creations, as we say every day. In the Ashrei, Tov Hashem Lakol, God is good to all. V'rachamav al kol ma'asav, and His mercy on all of His creatures." So Rebbe learned his lesson, and if he learned his lesson, from that day on he was healed. No longer did he have the digestive problems that he had. So from here we learn, of course, that mercy is, as we said in the last class, we're not allowed to cause undue pain to animals, and so the assumption is that shechita is the least painful way to kill the animal. Although we do it because we're commanded to. It's a commandment in the Torah. It's not explicit why we have to kill the animals in this way. But so there are some rules about how to make a kosher shechita. There's a mitzvah, a knife. It has to be checked that it has no edges to it, so that it's a very clean, quick process. Slit of the and there's different rules for slaughtering of animals, slaughtering of birds, but there is one other law which shows that we're trying to cause the least amount of pain, and that is that the Torah says you're not allowed to slaughter a mother and its young on the same day. In the modern day slaughterhouses, they actually have separate days for the older animal and the younger animals for that reason. Be careful. So, we have separate days so that you don't really have to worry about if you have if you know exactly and you have a sort of a more localized shechita, not part of the big industrial system of slaughtering, then you have to be careful. If you buy meat, you should ask, was its mother slaughtered on the same day or not? But it's very rare that you do that. Usually the kosher slaughter is all centralized and industrialized, and there they make sure they're having separate days for the older animals, which may be mothers, and fathers. As a matter of fact, it's also fathers as well. We don't usually know who the father is, that's why we usually talk about the mother. But you're not allowed to slaughter the father and the young on the same day. So we have separate days. That absolves us of that problem. But I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll take your questions. There's one other mitzvah which is associated with slaughtering the animal, and that is that you must cover the blood. It says that in the Torah explicitly. That applies only to chaya, this category, and ofot, the birds category. When you slaughter, the cows and the sheep, you don't have to cover their blood. Covering the blood does apply to birds and to chaya. We don't eat that many wild animals. The deer only really. So primarily the mitzvah, when you slaughter birds, you have to cover their blood. They're careful about this in the slaughterhouses. Usually in industrial slaughterhouses, all the blood gets collected into a basin. So the law is actually you should cover it from both below and above with earth. And so they put a little bit of earth in the beginning of the day into the basin. So all the blood that runs into the basin gets covered from below with that earth. And then at the end of the day, they cover it, all the blood. And there's a bracha to be said. I was a young child. I must have been under bar mitzvah, so I never really fulfilled this mitzvah as an adult. But my teachers took us out to a field trip, and they brought a shochet, and he slaughtered a few chickens with us, and we each got a turn to cover the blood of the chicken, and we said the bracha, if I remember correctly. And you're not supposed to use your feet because it's a mitzvah. You don't do that's a degrading way to do the mitzvah. So you take some earth and you put it on top of the blood. This also might be a little bit of a sensitivity to the animals, and but it's we don't understand exactly why. I mean, the Torah says that the blood is considered to be the life force of the animal, and so it shows a little bit of respect. But those are the laws of slaughter. We're not going to go into the more details. There's 5 rules. Learn Masechet Chulin. There's a lot of details there, but most of us are not going to become slaughterers. But someone who does slaughter has to be knowledgeable, and nowadays he has to be vetted, and he has to be certified as a kosher slaughterer. We actually had here a student, even as 2 years ago, here, who went off to live in a country which doesn't have kosher slaughter, or doesn't have easy access, and he wanted to learn to be a shochet. And I arranged for him a course with shochet only for birds. It's much easier for birds, and it's for the bigger animals, for behemoth, you need a much more extensive course. But he did a very quick course, and he learned how to do shechita, and now he can go to his backyard and shech the chicken. Hopefully he'll learn to cover the blood, and then make chicken soup for his Shabbos meal, even though he doesn't have a Jewish community anywhere near him. Most places you can import kosher meat from the closest Jewish community. Belgium, you're not allowed. Belgium and Denmark, I think, are the 2 countries in the world that have outlawed kosher slaughter.
Sweden now.
Is it Sweden? Belgium and Sweden. Is Denmark forbidden? Belgium?
It's unfortunately it's a growing problem in Europe.
Yeah. There's talk about it, but anyways, people import. But you can learn to be a shochet for birds in a relatively short amount of time. It's not that difficult. Of course, you have to have a stomach for it. Yes. Questions. Now I'll take questions.
That was my major question. If that's something we're interested in down the line. I can arrange a course for you. Sure. Yeah, it doesn't have to be too long, but there's studies, of course. You have to know the laws and know the rules, and then there's practical training. Of course, you have to have some experience. Yeah. No, that's actually forbidden. It has to be the power, the force of the knife. The knife has to be so sharp that you're never pushing down. If you push down, if you use any force, it's not a valid. It's just really you're pulling the knife over the neck, over not the neck, but over the throat area, and it's seconds and split seconds. The animal is dead, and. But that's all about shechita for today. Yes, another question, yeah.
But they say when you chop a chicken, he can still walk. Does it happen still?
Right.
Even if you do the kosher, it's still going to walk.
Another mitzvah which you know about, of course, which we haven't talked about, that it's even forbidden for the Gentiles. It's one of the 7 Noachide laws is to not eat. No, blood is permitted.
You can't rip the died animal.
The flesh. You're not allowed to eat from an animal which is still living. Ever minachai, a limb from a living animal. So if an animal's still living, you can't just rip off its leg and have a barbecue while the animal is still alive. But this what you're mentioning, that after the chicken slaughter, it's not no longer alive. It can still be like running around on the.
Just the effect.
There's a nervous system effect.
But that's considered rabbinically. It's considered to be you shouldn't be eating an animal that still has movement to it. You wait a little bit until that dies off. I saw that too when I was a little kid. The chicken running around with his head cut off. Literally, I saw the chicken with his head cut off. It was still running around.
Wow.
It's an interesting phenomenon of the nervous system. But there is another mitzvah that is associated. We talked about eating bugs and so forth. You're not. You are technically. There's no shechita by a chagav, by these locusts. There's no shechita. You could theoretically eat them alive, but there's another prohibition in the Torah which is called don't do anything disgusting. And a wriggly, a live locust is, although technically permitted, because there's no prohibition of shechita and there's no prohibition of aver min achai, a limb from a living animal, by these locusts. Rabbinically, it's a problem because it's considered disgusting. You're not allowed, it's called bal teshaktu. Sheket is something disgusting. Right? You're not allowed to do anything disgusting. Also, your behavior, anything which disgusts other people, you're not allowed to do. It's a good thing to keep in mind. So eating a living or moving being is considered to be disgusting, and therefore it's forbidden rabbinically, if not biblically. So this could even be biblically prohibited. It's a biblical prohibition. About to shaktu. There's a debate whether it's the biblical or rabbinic, but okay. Other questions? Yeah.
Rabbi, how is the Jewish slaughtering is different from the halal slaughtering?
So there's many more rules. They allow our kosher shechita, but we don't allow their shechita. Yeah, they're not as careful about the sharpness of the knife and. Not pushing down, and I don't know too much about halal, so I can't really answer the question. But it's well known that Muslims consider the kosher slaughter kosher for them, halal, but we don't consider they clearly don't have the traditions that we have about this precise rules of checking the knife before and after, and You don't even go back and forth. You only go in one direction, one slice. It has to, and it can't be tearing in any way. The trachea and the artery, the main artery. I forget what it's called. Okay. Other questions? Okay, so we're getting closer. There are a few other. Laws before we get to the ones you know about, mixing meat and milk and all those kind of things. Before that, we started off today review of what we had, gifts that you have to give from the produce. There are gifts that you have to give from animals as well. The Kohanim, what was their gift called from the vegetables and fruit? Teruma, very good. So from animals that have been slaughtered, there's a certain percentage, in the Torah it's described as the zroa, the front leg, right leg, lechayim, the cheeks, and the keva, the intestines, certain parts of that must be given to the Kohen. Comes out to be 8% of the animal. So there's a lot of rules about how to give these gifts to the Kohen. Nowadays, some people still, keep a Kohen on hand or have a friend who's a Kohen or somebody. We said before, most commonly, a Kohen can only eat so much meat, right? The way the industrial slaughterhouses, what is he going to get? What is he going to do with so much meat at once? Usually, we give him a loan, and you can give him the value of those particular pieces. It doesn't have to be in kind, like we said with the produce, which it does. Here, you can give the value of the Zruah L'Chayim Akiva to a Kohen. Some people give it to Torah scholars, yeshiva students who are Kohanim. Rav Davi Gun is a Kohen, our Rosh Yeshiva. May he live and be well. And people want to donate to Machon Meir. It's considered to be giving to him. and for all of the yeshiva students, commonly, Rabbi Lamed says that it's unfortunate. The custom is in many kosher supervision institutions, they void the mitzvah. How do they void the mitzvah? If the Kohen is an owner, then you don't have to separate off the gifts. So they give ownership to a Kohen. Excuse me. If it doesn't belong solely to a Jew, I strike out Kohen. If it belongs to a non-Jew, if the animal belongs to a non-Jew, then you don't have to give these gifts to the Kohen. And so they sell ownership of the animals that are slaughtered to a non-Jew, and they don't have to give off this 8% of the value to the Jews. But the Torah wants us to. So, but this is commonly done, that they void the mitzvah by selling the animal to a non-Jew, or at least part of it to a non-Jew. You have a partnership with a non-Jew, and so you don't have to give off the gift of the zeroah, the front leg, the chayayim, the cheeks, and the keva, the intestine, to the Kohen. Another mitzvah, which must be given to the Kohen, is some people say that the 10th animal, just like we had ma'aser by the fruits and vegetables, there's a 10th which has to be given to the Kohen from the animal. Not of every animal, the right hand, but every 10th animal. If you have 10 animals in your flock, you at the end of the year, it goes year by year, it's a cycle of a year. At the end of the year, you take all the animals through a gate, and the 10th one you mark, and the 10th one, so some interpretations are that it has to be given to the Kohen. More commonly, the most common interpretation, I think that's the standard halacha, is that it's not given to the Kohen, but it has to be, it's like ma'aser sheni. It has to be taken up to Jerusalem and eaten in Jerusalem. And of course, nowadays we don't have a temple. And we can't bring that, the animal should be slaughtered and sacrificed, and the meat is eaten in Jerusalem. We don't have the sacrifice, so we don't do that at all. And we don't even separate it off, because if we separate it off, then people might come to eat it, and it actually should be brought as a korban. So this second mitzvah of separating off stuff from the animal products is pretty much also voided, or it's avoided on purpose. It's interesting that we can avoid the mitzvah by how do we avoid the mitzvah? We just don't separate off the 10th animal. If you don't designate it as a 10th, it doesn't become the 10th. We have to designate it as the 10th. It doesn't become, how do you know which is 10th? Until you make this selecting process. So if you don't do the selecting process, you avoid the problem. And nowadays it just causes a problem because we can't sacrifice the animal, and so the animal would remain forbidden forever. And so we just don't separate off the 10th. So that's another gift. There's one other gift, which is when you shear the wool of an animal, you're supposed to give the first shearings to a Kohen. The animals, primarily the sheep, is what gets sheared. And the type of sheep that we use in the land of Israel, the wool is not worth very much. It's very rough, coarse wool. There's other types of sheep which we use for the wool for our clothing. What's called merino sheep and other kinds of sheep. Those are valuable, but these are not, the sheep which we slaughter are not very valuable. So usually if they're given, the shearings are given to those, why do we shear the sheep then if we're not going to use it? Just to make it lighter for the animal. So it's just not too hot. But we don't really use so the shearings are usually given to the people who are involved in shearing the sheep. So once the wool doesn't belong to the owner of the animal, there's no mitzvah to give it to the Kohen. So the people who shear, the workers who are shearing, they become the owners of the wool, and the first shearings don't have to be given to the Kohen. So that's also not practical today. The last one, which we'll talk about, but I have to stop here, we'll talk about maybe tomorrow. The last one is, which we'll leave for tomorrow, is the Bechor, the firstborn animal, and we'll talk about it in a little more detail because we're actually going to go see it a week from tomorrow.
Oh, so it's next week that you...
Next week, not this week, next week. Tu B'Shvat, next week. This was the last questions for today, and then we're going to go into the other room. And I don't know, I hope I know the answers. Yes?
Yeah.
A yak.
Oh, yeah.
A yak. It's a wild animal, right? It's not really domesticated.
It belonged to the
People grow them and people breed them. The wool is very good. I'm not sure if it's considered to be a kosher animal or not.
Like bison?
Bison, we said it is usually considered to be a kosher animal. Yeah. Again, it's one of the list of the permitted animals. We're not quite sure which ones they are, but the buffalo, bison, is, according to most poskim, one of those names that are mentioned in the Torah of the permitted wild animals. So they're kosher. Yak, also, I'm not sure though. I'm not sure about a yak. Whether we eat, whether it's considered to be one of those kosher animals. Stephen, if you could turn off the thing and just take it off the tripod because it's going to fall in any second.